I'll give this a go and see, might mix it around. So, thanks for making it to the last session. And my story, it starts with my dad. Sorry. Yeah, so my dad was born in the council estates of West Yorkshire. It was post-war England and times were tough. There wasn't a lot of money around. And yeah, they didn't get dessert. But sometimes they got a mint or a lolly. And Grandad's rules were whoever could suck on it the longest got to have a second. So as smart as my dad thought he was, he'd watch his younger brothers crunch that lolly, suck on it as long as he could. But he could never beat Grandma. And around the same time, there was ads on TV for Australia. I mean, Grandad, yeah, not just the TV, but the newspapers, the theatre, they were everywhere. So the opportunity was pretty obvious, and he bought himself and his family a £10 ticket to England. They landed in Perth, and it wasn't actually such a dream for my dad. He had that Yorkshire accent, struggled in school, and got bullied pretty badly. So he dropped out and pretty much did what any good young West Yorkshire lad would do. He started labouring. The problem was he kept labouring for the rest of his life. He never had a job he liked and really probably didn't make the most of the opportunity in Australia. So when I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my dad made that decision for me. When I was in year 12, he came into the kitchen with a stack of cash. He put it in an envelope and put it on the fridge. And he said, if you do well in school this year, you can have all that. So I studied my little ass off. And I got good enough grades for uni. I hadn't thought about what I was going to do. I was just thinking about the cash. But I always loved nature, and I thought I'd do something to do with that. So I studied environmental science. Let me just figure this out. Yeah. Anyhow, my first job after uni was in contaminated land, and I started sampling groundwater and soil up and down Western Australia, mine sites, petrol stations. There was one site in particular that was borderline between and not. And my time, the field lead at the time, she told me, oh, be careful over this groundwater well. Make sure your lip balm doesn't fall out and land in it. I thought, that's a weird thing to be worried about. But actually, the small amount of hydrocarbons and grease in that lip balm could have made the difference between tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of remediation. So, yeah, I got about fed up about worrying about my lip balm after about 5 years. And I moved over to Sweden to do a master's in sustainability. It was over there that I learned about how the cultural approach, you know, you hear about Sweden and the social values, and they really do take a community approach to managing their waste. And I learnt to separate my household waste into 6 different bin types. So when I came back to Australia, that's when I got my first job in the waste industry. I was working as an auditor for, let me try this again, for the C&D waste companies. And we were looking at recycling reports. And it wasn't long before I started to notice some of the numbers didn't quite add up. And I remember talking to my boss at the time and asking her, what's this? You know, it's a bit out of the ordinary to me. And she had a look and said, oh, don't worry about it. It's only plus or minus a couple of tons. That's no big deal. Well, to me it was a big deal. I'd just spent 5 years worrying about one drop of PFAS which was enough to contaminate the groundwater of 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And here we have some people, looking at waste reports and, oh, it was 2 tons of metal. Oh, no, it should have been cardboard, but whatever. Oh, actually, there was plasterboard in that, but it doesn't, nobody seemed to care. But I did care. And I still do. And that's why I started Traste, an app to help construction and demolition waste companies accurately report on their waste within plus or minus a couple of tons, let me tell you. All right, where are we up to? Yeah, so why are we talking about waste anyway? Probably a decade ago, wasn't a big deal to report on what's happening in construction. But today, Green Star is the thing. Now, I just want to see if anyone is awake in the room and ask everyone a hypothetical question. So, if you imagine I've just created the most sustainable coffee. In fact, it has 0 impact on the environment. You can have 1 million copies a day. There'll be no impact on global warming, like nothing about sea levels. This coffee is fantastic. Who here would pay an extra 5% for that coffee? What about 10%? 20%? Remember, this coffee hasn't got a single carbon emissions, is 100% guilt-free. 50% more for the coffee. Double. Awesome. Come see me later, I'm going to sell you some coffee. So the point is, sustainability isn't just a value, it's big business. As you can see here, 3 out of the 4 leading developers today have a Green Star mandate. It means every one of their developments has to be Green Star rated. The stats stack that up too. Since 2022, Green Star rated buildings have doubled every single year. And, it's just kicking off. So anyhow, Australia generates a lot of C&D waste, as you heard about in the blue Joe's report. I've lost track of time, so I'll go a bit quicker. But anyhow, it's literally 53 Olympic-sized swimming pools filled with C&D waste every day. That's the volume we're talking about. Now, only a fraction of that is Green Star waste and has some sort of voluntary reporting requirement. But it's still hundreds of thousands of tons that need to be looked at and estimated. Also, it's growing, as you can see with the Green Star. Now, it's Trish's job to do that estimating. This is Trish. She didn't even think of being a truck driver when she was older. When she was in high school. When she was back then, she had either uni or hospitality, and she didn't like to study. So she started working late nights, weekends, missing out on birthdays. And for her, COVID was actually a blessing in disguise. She got a chance to reassess what she wanted to do with her career, and that's when she saw an ad for Cleanaway's Female Driver Academy. She signed up, she got a HR license, and now she's been in that job for 12 months, and she absolutely loves it. So this is what she does. She picks up a skip bin off a construction site, takes it over to a facility, and it gets tipped out onto the floor. It's her job then for Green Star sites to get out of the truck, walk around, and do a bit of a visual estimate. Have a quick look, see what she thinks is recyclable. That data is then fed into a recycling report, which goes back to the builder, and they can get their Green Star compliance. Now, the scientist in me, as you might guess, questioned this and thought, isn't there a better way? We're just looking at it. Well, I spoke to my mate in the industry and a few others, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to process one skip bin of waste. With what I proposed was, can we separate out the materials and put it in a bucket? Then we weigh it. Then we have a known weight of all the materials. Well, we talk through, take about 5 to 8 minutes per material type. As Sarah said, there's a lot of mixed waste in these skip bins, so 5 to 6 materials is not uncommon, so we're looking at 30 to 40 minutes per skip. Now, if these businesses started spending that extra time, they'd have to charge their customers extra money, and it wouldn't be long before they'd be out of business. But yeah, so back to Trish. This doesn't point. So here she is, and but she's not the only one. You also have Tam. He's a Vietnamese immigrant. He loves his job. He's a super hard worker. And when I was down there in Victoria, he actually told me he got his son to download the app on his phone. But that job really means a lot to him. And then you also have in that facility the Danny brothers. 3 of them. They move as a pack. They've been in the industry for 15 years. They basically make collective decisions. And lastly, over in South Australia, you've got DC. Nobody knows his real name. He's a big, bikie-looking bloke, tattoos up and down, but he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And he's a real leader over in that facility. Anyhow, as good as all those drivers are, if you put the same waste pile in front of them, they're going to come up with a slightly different estimate. And so would I. So you can see the process is subjective, inconsistent, and hard to verify. If you look at, different drivers are going to see how things differently, and it's going to affect the data ultimately. But audits are conducted on this process once a year. The problem is they only look at the total weighbridge weight, and then they check if it matches the total weight of that report. There's nothing that actually looks into the granular detail of was it timber or cardboard or concrete. That's not checked. So it's kind of being ignored. Anyway, as you can see, I'm a little into this topic. I started on this with Cleanaway back in 2019. And back then they were working on paper estimates. It was sort of a new process coming out. So it was a pretty easy win to digitize that, and that's where I built Traste, the first app to digitize and save them time. In fact, I would say a lot of time. They had 3 different facilities, and these paper estimates were coming from left, right, and center, landing on Zoran's desk, the state manager at the time. And he had to then check the estimates and put them in and allocate them out to a job. And it was quite a painful process. Double handling was crazy. So Traste solved that problem back then. And nowadays we've just added to it. So made it easier for the drivers to use. And most recently we've implemented AI to make it more accurate and consistent for the waste estimates. So I'll give you a quick look of how it looks.
Add a new load.
Yeah.
Select your site and upload a clear photo of the docket and a photo of the waste load. Hit submit. Make sure your photos are clear and the docket is readable. Go to the Waste Estimate tab and select your load. Use AI to do your estimates more accurately and consistently. 20% building rubble, 10% cardboard, 10% gyprock, 20% metal, 15% plastic, 10% timber and 15% other. You can always change the percentages if required or use AI's estimate effortlessly.
Yeah, so how's it doing that? Well, AI is kind of like the internet. Nobody really knows how it works, it just does. No, that's not true. So anyhow, the image of the C&D waste has different pixels, and each of those pixels has a pattern. It extracts that information and compares it to the database of expected outcomes, and that's how it generates its percentage estimate of the material. Oh, sorry. kind of like this. So you may be curious to know, how does it perform? What we did is took 20 loads of C&D waste and we compared the driver's estimates to the AI estimate. We also took the image and did a manual color coding process to see if there was any significant variations between the two. So here's how that went. The drivers did an estimate and the AI did. And this is our mapping process. You can't see until about here, but you could see the colors changing on the image. Now, each of these methods has variability and all come with limitations. Driver estimates are highly subjective. In some cases, we've seen estimates over 70% for materials that weren't in the load. AI, on the other hand, only relies on what's visible in the image, and it often struggles to distinguish between similar materials. In fact, we have an minor issue with concrete and gyprock. It tends to overestimate concrete and slightly underestimate gyprock. So the mapping process is no better. Here you can see there's 36% timber, but the reason that is because there's a big door at the front of the image. And looking at a 2D map of a 3D substance is just going to create issues. But basically, overall, it did really well. 81% of the estimates were within 10% of what a driver would say anyways. And there wasn't a significant difference. So if it's not better or worse, why would we use it? Well, if you could just scroll down on the notes, thanks. It's not people dependent. It doesn't rely on whose shift it is or how rushed they are. It's consistent. It applies the same logic to every image every time. It's transparent. There's a clear and traceable record of what the AI saw and why it did it, and it's trainable. As you know, AI is only getting better. And because it's software, it's scalable. At a low cost, you can roll it out. So, yeah, sorry I'm running out of time. The thing is, it's the worst it's ever going to be, and it's already an A or a B+. It's not getting any worse than that. And it won't be long before we have cameras sitting on the roofs and drivers, Trish and DC, will just come and tip it out and walk away. The cameras will do all that. In fact, it's not long. It's now. Companies are already doing this. All of these are working with images and assessing waste. Not just construction waste, contamination in curbside bins, FOGO, hard waste, council waste. Is it a microwave? How often have we got there? And education. You can just pick up a bottle, scan it, it'll tell you which bin to put it in. So today, I'm not chasing that wad of cash on the fridge anymore. I'm chasing a world where we accurately track and responsibly manage our waste. As Bill Gates says, what isn't measured isn't managed. And if we don't measure our waste properly, how are we expected to meet all these circular economy initiatives? So if anything today has sparked interest or come up with some challenges that you might be facing in your business, feel free to come and have a chat. I'm around all the 3 days, and yeah, I'm always looking for opportunities for improvement. Finally, thanks again. I'm Simon from Traste, and I'm taking the waste industry digital, one load at a time. Thank you.